5, 4, 3. We are live. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. What's up, bitches? How you doing? Today I've got the main man in the house, K to the P. We call him the doctor, Mr. Senor Patel. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Glad to connect with you guys today. It's been a while, hasn't it? When did we connect last? It was on Sunday, I think.
Sunday.
Thought we say hi to you guys.
Sunday we were talking cryptocurrency with Netin Patel. That was a really interesting interview, actually. He gave actually a lot of knowledge through his presentation, and some of the websites were absolute nuggets of gold. So yeah, it was a good session. I really, really enjoyed it. However, Daniel's son, today is a new day. And so today we're going to just talk general news, because obviously there's a lot been happening in the news. But before we do, how was your day yesterday, KP?
Yeah, I had a really great day yesterday. So I had an interview in the morning. So you know, I was in central London, and I went to work for a leading American bank. And it was really interesting because the questions they really asked me really came across with my previous role. So I hope I did well, and I hope I answered their questions the best as I could. So it went really well. I hope I do hear some good feedback from them. I hope I get round to second interview. And then I'm not sure if Sol has put up our clips on Instagram. If any of our viewers who have been following us. Now, I did mention that I was going to do a pre-screening of a date that was coming up for Wednesday, and I do apologize. I'm sorry about that. I'm having difficulties with my phone. Now I know that's a poor excuse. Sol has been telling me on a daily basis to go and purchase a new phone, so I will be purchasing a new phone, and watch this space. I will be doing some videos straight for you. So yesterday I met up with a beautiful girl. She was really lovely. So we met up in around Liverpool Street. We went to a really nice restaurant, and the conversation was flowing. We were just batting questions over each other, and yeah, I thought she was really cute. I hope she will get in contact again. You know, I try to be as a gentleman as possible, and yeah, so let's hope she gets in contact, and I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting her up again, and then I will tell you guys how that goes as well. And hopefully I've got my new phone, so I'll be able to pre-screen you guys for this week, and then let you know if there is gonna be miss. But well, let's.
Whoa! We've just barely got over the first day, KP. Miss? Wow. Okay, slow down, Skippy. Slow down. Whoa. But anyway, I'm glad that he was able to kind of let you. So you had a good day yesterday. Effectively, you had a very, very good day. And ladies and gentlemen, KP is right. The difference between an air sign and a Gemini, an air sign and an earth sign. KP has just mentioned, I have spoken repeatedly, get yourself a new cell phone. Get yourself, he's got the money. It just takes so damn long. So earth signs, they just take incredibly long times to go around the sun. My God. But I think yesterday his eyes have been open. But listen, I'm super happy for you. You've had a great, so by the sounds of it, you had a very good interview. And then it sounds like back to back you had a date. So technically you were kind of being questioned on two fronts, the corporate front and the relationship front. Okay, good. I had an amazing day yesterday. So just enjoying the weather. I had an amazing acting class yesterday, which I was preparing for. I had to learn a script. I was being filmed. I was on camera. It was quite strange, and I've just been really connecting with relations from all over the world. So I'm super excited about that, and building relationships with the lost and the found, I guess. So yeah, but other than that, some sad news, whether you knew or not. Our beloved physicist, Dr. Stephen Hawking, passed away at the age of, I think it was 76. We're going to Google that, Kat, if it was 76 that he passed away. But unfortunately, Dr. Stephen Hawking has transited to another realm. And also Jim Bowen passed away. If you're outside of the United Kingdom and if you're below a certain age, Jim Bowen was the presenter of a game show called Bullseye, which was based on darts and general knowledge questions, I believe. And he also passed away. So despite myself and KP having a great day, unfortunately, in terms of people might say icons, but in terms of important people, specifically Hawkins, we lost we mourn, shall I say, a national treasure. Now that's not to say that he's more important than you or I, but in terms of contribution, in terms of science and physics and astronomy, then yes, we have lost an icon, as KP would remind me. So, of course, the conspiracy theorists are already out in arms, saying he's been snuffed off, he's been killed off because he was about to expose something. Shut the fuck up. You don't know what happens. And it's like every time somebody passes away that they've got murdered. People die, old people die, okay? But the fact is we don't really know what happened. I just hope that he's in a better place, he's in a better condition. And we wish his family all the best. So yeah, so today, as KP would like to say, we're going to deep dive. We're not going to deep dive today. Deep diving is for specific subject matters. So we're not going to deep dive, but we want to just kind of bring you some general information, what's going on. Oh yeah, the war in Iraq is still continuing. Libya has gone to shit. What else? Syria is completely imploded. But other than that, everything's peachy. Not. So the main news is that Russia is posturing against the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom is posturing against Russia. And as I was informed yesterday, all the Russian diplomats have been given a week to leave the country. Now, if you don't know the story, a double agent, both working for presumably or allegedly MI6 and the KG used to be, him and his daughter were both poisoned within the last 2 weeks. They were in critical conditions, so they are still barely hanging on by a thread, but they're in critical conditions. Now, this is not the first time that this has happened. I mentioned in previous videos that Ilimanenko suffered the same fate. He was also a double agent, and he was actually poisoned. But the conflict between Great Britain and Russia has been going on for some time. It's not happening overtly until recently, but it's been very, very sort of covertly been playing out. And it seems to be coming to a head. And I mentioned to KP a few hours ago that with the amount of negative news and press, with the spotlight being on the ex-USSR, it's almost like, because they have their independence from the powers that be, the banking moguls, the World Bank, that it feels like they're almost being targeted. If you remember back in 2005, 2006, with the incident in Georgia, where Russia entered Georgia, it seems that the relations, the international relations between the rest of the world and Russia has completely deteriorated. And I find it interesting that once again, we seem to be talking about Russia, because I don't really know too much about Russia. And this is not an academic type of talk that we're having. As I mentioned, this is just general news. But it appears from my own perspective that the Russian government is up against a challenge, i.e. the West, whereby it appears that the West seems to be pushing and prodding and poking, trying to get a type of reaction from Russia. And I believe, under the wisdom of Vladimir Putin, that he hasn't responded, or there hasn't been a negative reaction with regards to, for example, NATO. And if you don't know who NATO are, let me break it down for you. They are the World Army. So we have a World Bank, we have a World Army, and who knows, we might just have a world religion, but that's yet to come. But NATO is the World Army. It comprises of many nations pulling and plugging their resources together to have this World Army, which, i.e., in effect, is NATO. Now, NATO, basically, who is spearheaded by the most dominant superpower, which, as you can imagine, is the United States, or the Virginia Company, or the Indian Company, as it's formerly known, has wanted to put bases on countries that surround, that neighbor Russia. In other words, they want to fence Russia in. So it's an interesting situation. KP, what is your, I know you've been looking into this, what is your take on this?
Well, really, what as you've said, there is a to and fro going between the UK and Russia. Now, really, Theresa May was put into a position where she had to make a decision with Russia on their aggression that they are portraying to the West. Whether it's through they've used various outlets through fake news, trying to put out really news that is not really true in essence, and trying to cause not havoc, but they're just prodding slowly with nations in the West. And also, Theresa May was put under pressure for her to really give a decision on what direction she wants to go, and she's been pretty hard, I have to admit. She's said that she's told the Russian embassy for 23 diplomats to leave the country within a week, which is a strong notion, really, to say that UK are not backing down. It happened with a previous a spy agent, former spy agent, and Levenko, and and with the so they did an investigation, which took a considerable amount of time, and I think Theresa May has now used that as advice from her, I guess, from the MI6 and other people, to other people in her cabinet, to really make a decision on where she should go with this. And also, what I've found is that even the backbenchers, who are normally don't go with majority, or well, some of Theresa May's direction in other topics, but it was surprising that the backbenchers in the government, they were for with her about removing these diplomats. Now, the opposition, the Labour, Jeremy Corbyn, has been more, let's say, cautious with the decision that Theresa. He does agree that where Theresa May is coming from, but he's looking at the underlying information in terms of, do we have proof that it is Russia who, tried to assassinate this double agent, and he's telling Theresa May that we should really have positive evidence to suggest it was from Russia. Now, I don't know how Jeremy Corbyn can really say that, because a nerve agent, you can't just buy that off the shelf, right? And you will find signatures within that particular nerve agent may tell you where it originated from. And so really Jeremy Corbyn, I think he's politically, he has to be careful, because majority, some of people in his cabinet are unhappy with the decision, how he's going with how to deal with Russia. So there's a to and fro with the opposition leader and Theresa May. But funny enough, Theresa May is getting more views in terms of decisions that she's making with Russia. And she's trying to also get the neighboring states as well to agree to what she's trying to get voices from other nations. And the US as well has backed Theresa May, on Russia, Vladimir Putin, because Vladimir Putin is really, he's a strategist. He's in the long term. He knows how to really play the long game, and so, like I said, interesting.
Theresa May's in a very unusual position, because at the moment let's just have a conversation. She's in a very unusual position because of what's going on in Brexit. So she needs to look as if she's taking leadership of the country, primarily because of this rift that's taking place internally with Europe, number one. But even if you look at the espionage business, it's a very strange, it's a very weird industry to be in. You're a spy, you have a license to kill, you have access to information, you have access to certain technology. It's a very weird and crazy world that we call espionage. But like when you go to war, any type of, for example, military campaigns, you expect there to be casualties, unfortunately. So why would we not expect there to be casualties in this weird and murky and dark world that we call espionage, especially if you're a double agent? I'm surprised that we're shedding so much light on this particular case. It's not like we sent soldiers into Afghanistan, 100 of them, and they got mowed down by the Taliban. One guy got poisoned. He's still alive. So don't you think, like, this whole world of 007 license to kill type of figurines, it's a very weird world to be in, wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree what you're saying, but the method used in this case, they used a nerve agent. So, and also it happened in Salisbury, in an open public place where other people were, they could have been poisoned as well, because it's a nerve agent that, if you get in contact with it, I'm not sure if it's airborne or if it's, other means, but really yes, the espionage, normally they use methods where you're only targeting that one, but what they really did in this case is went publicly and they attacked the public as well, the UK citizens, because really you're using a nerve agent that could have potentially affected people within that restaurant, right?
Okay, let me answer this question, KP. Let me answer this question. So because we're just having a conversation, we don't really want to, obviously, we're observing it from the point of view through a very narrow window. And remember, we're not academics in the sense of we've been trained in foreign policy per se. But let's flip it on its head. Let's imagine it was a spy that was in Russia that was being poisoned. Would it have been given as much attention, do you think?
That's it, because I haven't read many stories of agents being poisoned or other means of trying to kill agents, because really you got to remember that the news that comes out of Russia is probably filtered, right? It's probably read by the KGB. I'm not saying this. I'm just saying conspiracy, right? So the news that probably is probably reviewed or screened by the KGB, and so really, the news that comes out of Russia, I haven't read much about agents, and so that's a difficult question. But how would Vladimir Putin deal with it? He would brush it under the carpet. He wouldn't let the media try to run tail with that, and really dig deep, because in our nation we have freedom of speech, and we've got the freedom to say what we like. In of course,
when you say freedom of speech, you mean freedom of the press?
Yeah, so freedom of speech, freedom of press. Yeah, they have got liberties where they are able to talk openly. Of course, some newspapers are politically aligned, but they do have a voice, right, on what is happening in different subjects, both sensitive or just public, wider community information. But in Russia, I feel that they are kind of restricted. Is Russia a communist country? Would I say so? I'd probably say yes. You've got one guy.
Well, it is a communist country, for the fact that, forget the sort of the overtly notion of communism, but it's communist in the fact that, but in a smart way, I think, that they don't allow multinational companies to enter the country, set up, and then start to become very powerful, where it starts to persuade the leadership of the country. Whereas when you look at, so I mean, Europe, classic example, Brussels, total lobbyist, they want to set the rules and agendas for each and every nation. Russia doesn't have that. So in that sense, Russia, you could argue actually that Russia is actually a lot freer than perhaps Europe in many sense, because they avoid that type of power swing, moving to sort of the corporate bankers. And when I'm talking about bankers, I'm not talking about someone that runs a bank. I'm talking about people that own huge organizations, many organizations, so i.e. bankers. So Russia is very much acutely, but then it's also hurt their economy because of the fact that they don't have certain public traded companies within that country. If you look at the infrastructure, for example, of Russia, a lot of the roads are terrible. I mean, the Ukraine, for example, which is obviously a separate country, very different in many ways, but very similar in so many ways. If you go to the Ukraine, which I have been to the Ukraine, the roads are horrible. It's like going back in time. And that's because they don't have companies or contracts given to companies to fix the roads, to fix the bridges, to fix the taps, the bathrooms. That's where Russia falls down. Whereas when you come to the United Kingdom, for example, you have those amenities, you have those services through tenders, through bids, through contracts, because we allow multinational companies to grow their business in this country. They have a super great deal in terms of the tax reductions. I mean, it's ridiculous. But at the same time, then they're able, if the company's big enough and influential enough, they can then go to Brussels and start to persuade the leadership in Brussels to think and to move in a certain way. that can also have a knock-on effect with regards to what's being presented in the media, the way we should think and the way we should live, and the type of policies that should be carried out. So Russia doesn't necessarily suffer with that, but because they are very tightly gripped in terms of who they let into the country and who they do not, democracy doesn't move as freely as, say, the Western countries. But let me ask you this, KP. China, is that a communist country?
Well, China, I would say again, is a communist country because the current president Xi Jinping, he's put a policy through.
Did you just make that name up? Did you just make that name up? Xi Jinping.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was Xi Jinping, wasn't it?
That's no, I thought you were joking. I thought you were joking. I didn't realize. Okay.
No. And yeah, so he's put a policy through that he'll be a lifetime president, right? So
wow.
You know, he put that through, and I think it's going to go through, you know, their government, and I think it's going to go through, and it went through. I think the China. What's the first? Anyway, yeah. So majority of the government officials have voted for him to be the lifetime president. You know, and that hasn't since Mao, right? The Chinese President Mao. You know, back in the 1960s and 70s, there was a policy that he put in place where, you know, you'd be a lifetime president, but then they changed it to again 4-year. But now again, it's Xi Jinping has come in and he said, "Well, hang on a minute,
can democracy and communism work in tangent?" Because I agree with you, China still has that communistic type of mentality, but yet they're very capitalistic. But how does that work? Because communism is vehement against democracy, is vehement against capitalism specifically. But yet when we look at China, one of the wealthiest nations in the world, they are absolutely, you know, creating money, spending money. I mean, they're going around the world to collect precious metals, but yet they're a communist country. I mean, how does that work? Communism and capitalism, because surely the two ideas, they oppose each other. So it seems that there's a bit of a mismatch, but they seem to have it working for them. But actually, if you look at China, they are starting to open up. Surely, the way of thinking in terms of humans in that nation state are starting to open up and succumb to greed, really, because capitalism allows one to determine their own destination, their own destiny, and all that good stuff. So it's very interesting. But yeah, we have to watch this space with between Russia and China, because I suspect that really the West is really poking a sleeping giant at the moment, and people may not agree with my statement coming out next, but you have to give praise to Vladimir Putin, because had it been anybody else, I mean, the East and West Cold War could be back on right now. Some argue that it really is. It never really stopped. But I mean, it could be a lot more volatile than it is now. Do you think that we are moving into a volatile situation with Russia at the moment, KP?
I just wanted to finish off before I answer your question about China. I do like the President Xi Jinping because he's rooting out corruption. You know, in a communist country, you do have the tendency of corruption within your government, right? So he's trying to remove that. So he's got rid of a lot of people. And the question that I'm going to answer now is about Russia and what they're, you know. So your question was regarding.
Do you think that we are moving into very volatile? And by the way, did you just get that from Wikipedia?
No, I've been
Because obviously Wikipedia is the most trusted source out there. Right, yeah.
I've been following China and their policies for a while, and I really love reading about them. They are going to be the next, force of this world, other than the US, and they will outplay. Sorry, they will be the next superpower. I say within the next 30 years. But the question to Russia, I do feel that the policies that Russia are placing on the world, with their allies as well as their rivals. It's a balance. It's a very intricate balance, and if Vladimir Putin's not careful, he's going to isolate himself even more from the Western world. But I feel he's got strong ties in the East, with a lot of South Asian countries. But he has to. His foreign policy, he is treading on. But then, coming from a military man, he knows how to play the long game, and I think Vladimir Putin is a strategist, and he knows what's doing.
That's probably what it is. He's a genius.
He's a strategist, and he knows how to play people. He's
a genius, and he's, like you said, he's playing the long game. He's a strategist. He has, in terms of, there's horrible feedback at your end. In terms of, he's outlasted the last five presidents of the United States. If you go back to Fidel Castro of Cuba, he outlasted some ridiculous amounts of US presidents. But again, we're talking about tyrants and obviously dictators. So this war with China, this volatile situation that's taking place right now with Russia will be scrutinized. And as KP said, Vladimir Putin, he is isolating himself to the degree, as I mentioned before, that he doesn't answer to the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the great banking organizations of the world that will fund both sides to go to war with each other, which is a common fact. He's not playing that type of game, and it appears, and I could be wrong, because I normally am wrong, but it appears that they want to take down Russia, and Vladimir Putin is not having it. Russia is the largest country in the world, has the most resources in the world. Does Russia need any other country? It does need to cooperate and establish good trade relations with other countries, like the World Trade Organization, and so forth. But I think it's a very difficult situation. Going back to the poisoning of this Russian spy, it's very reminiscent of the North Korean Kim Jong-il, who murdered, I think I'm saying his name right, who murdered his stepbrother in Malaysia. If you remember that story, two North Korean women apparently thought they were on a game show, were sent to Malaysia, something along these lines, were sent to Malaysia, potentially slipped something into his drink, or something happened where there was contact with his ex-brother, and it turned out that they were used as mules to poison him without them even knowing. So there is this correlation between what we're seeing in Great Britain with this particular case, this double agent being poisoning him and his daughter in Salisbury, and a police officer, which is what KP was referring to when he meant it was wide open in the public domain. And unfortunately, it appears that this policeman is a casualty of international espionage, unfortunately. But there seems to be a correlation between that case in Malaysia and also this case here in Great Britain. But again, I ask you, the world of espionage, double agents. I mean, come on, if you're a double agent, if you're an agent in the first place, I mean, you're the chances of you surviving, depending on where you're shipped out to, depending on what your responsibility is, are pretty slim. Needless to say, you're a double agent, and you was an agent for Russia. Come on, like really, like come on. So all I'm saying is that while it's sad that we have casualties of this silent war, but this is the game that we're playing, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about international espionage. You're not going to come out at the other end with a pocket full of posies and a tissue. No, you're probably going to get a bullet to the head. So again, I'm just curious to find out why such the spotlight. Russia, 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 Russia. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. KP, what else has been happening in the world of the weird and wonderful?
Right. So what else has been happening? So we spoke about the unfortunate passing of the physicist Stephen Hawking. Unfortunate news there. So and also what else has been happening in the world really? So again, I think we've spoken about Brexit already. Oh yes, so Donald Trump is going to be meeting with you mentioned the North Korean leader Kim Jong Un. So they both have. So the South Korean ambassador. So one of the South, I think it was a South Korean ambassador, went to the White House, and he gave from what Kim Jong Un wanted is to have a sit down, right? And whether that's going to happen or not is another thing. But what really I think is open up the dialogue that has been going to and fro between North Korean and US has been leading, where they're all fighting dog eat dog, right? Of course, Donald Trump has been putting his daily tweets on his Twitter, funny, given his
Celebrity Apprentice goes mad,
and he's trying to just do digs at him, and also Kim Jong Un has been doing his part as well, saying the US are
do you see resolution coming at some point? Do you see?
So I was going to say that when what's really happening is Donald Trump he's a businessman at the end of the day, right? And he knows how to deal with certain individuals, and so he's going through a business sense where he's making an agreement, right? So I think I can see Donald Trump really, I can really see him working with North Korea to come with a mutual agreement to, denuclearize, their ambition for building weapons and so forth, right? And so I can see Donald Trump coming in and pulling the strings and telling them, look, we've got all these sanctions against you at the moment, and it's really put a string on your country. But we're willing to, pull back some of those sanctions if you play ball with us and you denuclearize, your ambitions, because it's, with the world at the moment, it's dialogue, because many people have foreseen, that there's going to be a third world war, and there's going to be havoc in the near future. But if we got presidents like Donald Trump coming in, and he's seeing peace, right? He's seeing that peace is the way forward, and he's willing to go over to North Korea or meet in a mutual country like South Korea, and really start having open dialogue. And I hope Kim Jong Un does agree to whatever comes out of the talks. You know, so I think that's interesting. I think that's really promising, and you know, it's
Yeah,
have a peaceful world.
yeah, yeah. No, you are right, KP. I thought it was interesting as you were talking how quickly this situation potentially may turn around, where there may be resolution. And what came into my mind was, what does North Korea have over the United States for Donald, to want to meet with Kim Il Jun? I'm not saying there's anything untoward happening, but I question, where has this turnaround come from very quickly? We could talk about the Winter Olympics in South Korea or something like that. That's fine. Um, but we could also argue that there is potential that North Korea, if they wanted to, could strike America. That's the reality. I don't think that the Donald wants to talk to King Il Jun because he wants to make peace. Like you said, he's a businessman. And to be good at business, you got to be harsh. You want to be a millionaire? You got to be harsh. You got to be aggressive. Donald Trump is aggressive. That's why he's a billionaire. Same principle in politics. So why now the sudden turnaround? Remember, a couple of months ago, or even last year, certain earthquakes were taking place, tsunamis in the middle of the ocean. Was that the North Korean military testing a new long-range missile underneath the ocean? What was taking place? Did, in fact, North Korea send out a missile to Hawaii and then was quickly diverted or had exploded? We don't know. I don't know. But it is very interesting the way that Donald Trump now all of a sudden, and is quite hasty to make peace with his arch enemy, Kim Il Jun. But I will say this: Donald Trump is the perfect man to oversee this type of situation. It takes that certain type of archetype, that character, to deal with the issue of North Korea. I don't think Barack Obama could have got the job done. George W. Bush couldn't have got it done, or his father before him, or Bill Clinton. But Donald Trump seems, from where I'm sitting, to at least make progress. There is dialogue going to and fro. Because I don't think that just sanctioning this state, this rogue state that we call North Korea, is the answer. And clearly it's not working, because their technology seems to be moving forward, despite the sanctions. The people are suffering, but they're willing to give their lives up for their one and only true leader. So it's interesting. Very, very interesting, KP. Wouldn't you say?
Totally agree that Donald Trump is the man who I personally think can come out with this, you know, with this interesting alliance. And whether it be an alliance, I'm not sure, but really, I think it's a good political move for Donald Trump. You know, the elections are coming up in the US in November, so he needs to have, you know, he needs to be shown as someone who is a leader, right? You know, he's showing his nation that he's able to deal with issues on a peaceful. Yes, still have the notion, if you play with me, I've got the tools that outflank you, right? And I've got, you know, the military behind me to make that decision. But really, what I want is peace. And also, I think the US can't afford to go into another war, right? I don't think they want to go into another war. You know, they're just coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan, you know,
Yeah.
on those wars. And
Great job, guys. Good job.
yeah, I trust
We're
me.
defending democracy. Hoo-ah, democracy.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You know, but the thing is, you know, I don't think they can afford to go to have another war. So at these times of peaceful, it's best to open dialogue and to try and find a resolution for both parties to leave peacefully. But again, he's a rogue nation. You know, how is that going to work? North Korea's been a rogue nation for decades, right? So unwinding all that, how it's going to be interesting how they deal with that. It's going to be very complicated.
I suspect that North and South Korea will reunite again. I believe that with the Republican Northern Ireland. I really believe that this fracture that has happened in these countries will heal. They will mend. I can see North and South Korea becoming one country again. I can see Republic of Ireland and Ireland becoming one country again. But I think that for that to happen, there's going to be a shift in not just foreign policies, but in terms of general economics. I think economics, not just in those countries, but on a world stage, will promote uniting of these countries. I don't have any, I mean, this is all fictitious, what's coming out of my mouth, obviously. But my gut instinct says that when these nations, it's not if, I believe it's going to be when these nations do decide to come together as one people, one nation, that we'll also see a promotion in the way that we trade, import, export will be revolutionized as well. But be it for the better or be it for the worse. But I think that's what was going to propel these nations to reunite. Because the thing with international policy is that you cannot divide the politics from the economics. It's like, let's say, let me give you an example. It's all about balance, right? So you heard the story about the golden goose that laid a golden egg, and about the farmer that was totally surprised, like, wow, this goose is loaded, is just laid this golden egg. And then day after day, this goose is laying this egg, and then one day he gets impatient because he's starting to make some money now, he's making a fortune. And what happens? He cuts open the goose, killing the goose, no more golden eggs. So it's all about balance. So the egg is where we're trying to get to, but the goose is the work and the balance that has to be put in for that golden egg to be laid. So it's all about balance. So that's why I think that you can't separate economics from politics or politics from economics. If we look at the Middle East with the Arab question, predominantly it's all about the Arabs, the Palestinians, and the Jews. But when we get into this notion of blaming the other person and not taking responsibility, blame. So the Hebrews are blaming the Arabs, the Palestinians are blaming the Hebrews. Perhaps if they were to look at each other and recognize the faults within themselves, then there's no one to blame. But again, it's all about balance. So you can't separate politics from economics, because it's the economics that basically drive to politics. Without the economics, there isn't politics, because money runs the world. Capitalism. Anyway, any other news that we need to move into, KP?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about, so we're going away from politics and governments and what's going on. It's businesses. The hospitality sector is going through a massive strain of investment. So because what it is there's a lot of restaurants at the moment who are losing a lot of profits.
Yes.
They're trying to, they're having difficulty paying off their creditors.
Right.
So you can see at the moment there have been chains that are closing a numerous amount of stores. across the UK, and it's really putting a strain in this sector. That from the likes of Carluccio's to Jamie Oliver's restaurant. There's
Toys
another.
R Us. Toys R Us closing down how many stores?
Yeah, and yeah, I was going to get to that. I was talking about the hospitality
Oh, excuse me.
area first, and it's really these companies are really finding it hard to, you know, with their investments that they have, it's not enough with what profits that are coming in, money that's coming in to the organization, to the creditors they have to pay. So they're finding that they, you know, some of them are really finding it difficult to make ends meet. And also, there's a case where, you know, the business rates, you know, in the UK are the government's considering increasing the business rates. There is, you know, when it comes to customer confidence, it's still low, and people are not really going out there for eating, you know, as they were doing, say 10 years ago. I think it's got to do with austerity. People are really looking at their purses, their strings of what money they have, right? And you know, wages are not really rising. I know this year, start of this year, the OBR has said that the wages have increased, but not to the level where people can afford to go out and, you know, have a meal, like, you know, with a family, and like, you know, 2.4 children and so forth. So I think that's putting the strain, and really the government has to look at ways of helping this sector to deal with times of around austerity. And then now you've mentioned within Toys R Us, which is the bedrock of you know, toys, the toys that are distributed around the world. You know, by this, it was a huge organization, and now they're closing every single store in the US, and in the UK they're closing all their stores because they've gone into administration. They couldn't afford to pay off their creditors. Again, the investment coming in to money coming in is not. It's just so not. They're not able to pay off all these various people. So yeah, there are businesses out there who are really struggling, and also with Carillion, you know, they went into administration within the building sector, right? So they were a huge construction contractor, that had lots of contracts with the government, you know, building hospitals and building various other key infrastructures, right? And they went into administration. So, like, what is going on? You know, is this a case of Brexit? Is it an influence where the businesses are seeing, well, hang on a minute, we don't know where Brexit is going, so our investments, yes, we've got a base in London, but we may have to move that into Europe because we want to be aligned with Europe. So so there's so many different factors that are happening with businesses out there, and they are really, some of them are really straining to make ends meet. And unfortunate, Toys R Us has now gone to administration. There's another one, Maplin's.
Oh, really?
Maplin's, an electronic store. You know, I know I think they have gone into administration. Don't go on this. I have to double check that. But they are finding it difficult to find investors. Because of the internet, people are now able to, you know, like the likes of Amazon, eBay. You can, you know, buy your goods online now. You know, and there's other outlets as well online. So they're putting strain on high street retailers.
Right.
You know, before you could just, you know, you could just go down the shop and, you know, and buy yourself whatever you want. But now, with the touch of a button on the internet, that is really that is really affecting these underlying, costs and the for businesses to continue running. So I don't know how you feel, Sol, in terms of businesses and really, have you seen down your high street that shops are closing? High street chains.
Look, okay. There's two trains of thoughts here. The first train of thought is that we are living, which we've spoken about on numerous occasions. We are living in what we call a new economy, which means that we're living in the tech age, whereby jobs and responsibilities that were traditionally undertaken by manual labor is now being replaced by machines and robots. So in terms of the general population, they are now forced to upgrade and revamp and relook at their skill sets, which is a good thing. However, the warning shot over the bows was when Woolworths went into administration and the government did not step in and save that chain. Woolworths really was an iconic retailer in the United Kingdom. So that was really the warning shot over the bows. Now we're seeing other companies, retailers, not just in retail industries, but other industries starting to fold and fall, the domino effect. And I imagine in the next 2 to 5 years, when you go down the high streets, you will not see shops. The only retailers that you're going to see shops and restaurants. Forget about purchasing, going into your local Debenhams to purchase your clothing. You have to get it online. I envision in the next 2 to 5 years, 80% of the retailers will be either moving online predominantly as their main focus of business, or will be going into administration. And I think that the landscape is changing very quickly. And that's a scary thing. Change is inevitable, but when it's moving so quickly and you're not giving the people time to adjust, that's where we're going to have a problem. And the second thing is that we need people in this country to go and spend the money to keep the engine turning, yeah? Because it's an in and out, it's a spread, buying and selling, exchange of money, going into different hands. So we are in a very, very unusual period of time with regards to, again, economy, because economics drives politics. I know that we've moved away from politics, but again, you cannot separate the economics from the politics. I think we need more entrepreneurs, more young entrepreneurs to set up, to stand up, to now start creating jobs, start to create from their imagination and make it become a reality, to employ people with various different skill sets. The labor market is pretty much finished. And so therefore, we have to upgrade our knowledge. Knowledge is really the key here. Knowledge, a desire, and execution. When you look at rich people versus poor people, two fundamental things. One, rich people are good at maths. Two, rich people have a burning desire for knowledge. When you have a burning desire for knowledge and you can execute, that puts you in a very good position for you, be it as an individual or as an organization, to circumnavigate any economy. As the old saying goes, knowledge is power. So by adopting an attitude of knowledge about everything, yes, it's impossible. But by adopting this attitude of possessing knowledge, It puts you in a better position when the storms of life come to know how to keep yourself and your organization afloat. The problem is, when and you see this a lot with the older generation, is that they've been so conditioned to think in a certain way, go to school, go to college, get a 9-to-5 job, that they forget to invest in themselves. And if you're one of those unlucky sods that has worked in the factory for 20, 30, 40 years, and that factory now closes down, what do? You've got to learn new skill sets. You've got to acquire knowledge. So as the old saying goes, the prevention is better than the cure. And although it sounds quite simple, sounds very blasé, I really believe in what I'm saying, that while we have this opportunity to experience this spectrum of what we consider reality, allegedly, then we should spend all our time acquiring as much knowledge and making a plan and executing what we want in life. If you don't do that, then you will find yourself being given a written notice. You will find yourself being called into an office and saying, I'm so sorry, Mr. Jones, Mr. Smith, but we have to let you go because we can't afford you. You are going to face those circumstances where that business that you've worked for will be closing down. We've seen a shift on online purchasing. So the question is, let's look at Amazon, for example. They are the primary distributor of hard books, of hard copy of books. But the owner, Jeff Bezos, he faced the reality. He saw that people were moving to electronic devices to read content. Effectively, Jeff Bezos was going to destroy the very business that made him a billionaire, a multi-billionaire, right? So what did he do? He launched the Amazon Kindle, right? Because he understood that the patterns were changing. He looked at the demographics of people buying books, hard copies online, the people that were rather downloading electronic books was more. And therefore, he decided to launch Amazon Kindle. But had he not faced the truth with regards to this new economy, then he would be making a loss. But he had the balls to face the truth and say, I'm going to purposely damage the very business that I've created in order to keep up with the trends in the marketplace. So there's an important lesson there that I think we perhaps need to look at. Again, we can't separate politics from economics. And unfortunately, although we are the only species that primarily relies on economics, because we have to feed ourselves. We're not one of these animals that can go into hibernation for 6 months of the year like a brown bear does, right? You can sleep it off, or a polar bear that goes into hibernation for 3 to 6 months. We have to sustain ourselves every single day. Every single day. And every single day it's getting that much harder. The bills are going up. Your utilities are going up. Your cost of living is going up. This is not on a weekly or monthly, this is on a day-by-day basis. So with that being said, if we are not creating more opportunities through acquiring knowledge, through planning and through execution, then we are subject to the environment, the terrain, and it's getting rough. So that's my take on this. Although you may not see the correlation between what I've just mentioned now and the overview, believe me, there is a correlation. The correlation is this, that we all have to take personal responsibility for our action. And what may have worked yesterday will not necessarily work tomorrow. So we have to be flexible and balanced in our thinking, because if I have a lawnmower is brand new lawnmower, and I'm mowing my lawn, but I don't maintain that lawnmower, after about 2 seasons, it's done. But a power output from that lawnmower is about 50%. It's not cutting the grass efficiently. Why? Because I did not maintain that lawnmower. So the golden egg, the goose that lays the golden egg, you can't have one without the other. So in this instance, the golden goose, the egg was the lawnmower, but the golden goose is the maintenance of that lawnmower. So therefore, knowledge equals power. So whether you're a business owner or whether you are an employee, the same rules apply, so it makes no difference. Over to you, KP.
Yeah, I guess, are you asking me the question on what I think businesses should do in order to?
I'm not asking you anything. I'm just
to actually
specifying where I see the future. No, I'm not suggesting anything. I wasn't even asking you a question per se. I was just making a statement where I see the future, which in a nutshell is that with these major retailers closing down, what are we going to be left with if not the hospitality industry? Although you're saying that they're under stress and pressure, I can quite easily see that all you're going to see Wembley High Road will be your Starbucks and your coffee houses, your coffee republics, and your restaurants. You're not going to see your retailers, which are your electronic stores, your Dixons and your Currys and all these phone shops. They'll be gone. So if you're an employee, what do? You've got to get knowledge, right?
Well, really, it's a two-way thing, right? So really, employers should really provide reskilling their staff, right? So if they're changing their business model and they're shifting around, their businesses, and they have to get rid of certain people or reskill them, they should provide reskilling training for those people to then move into those particular roles. Yes, I agree that people should be that knowledge is power, but it should be helped both from the government, right? So they should provide assistance in certain sectors where they are not squeezing those businesses for taxes, right? So like business rates, say for example. So they should give them an exemption on certain sectors, right? But on the employers, yeah, they should be really providing reskilling for their staff. And where they're not able to reskill their staff, they should really provide so say for example, people who really want to leave, provide compulsory redundancies for those people. But when those people leave, what I did personally for myself is I went back to education. I went and did a master's in my case. But for other people who want to do a career change, right, they should really look at what they're passionate about. Really do a job that you enjoy. Don't do it because of the numeration. How much you're going to earn, because you can go into a job and do it for a few years, but you're going to find you're going to get bored again. And you're doing a job where you may, it might again be, you might lose that job, because you've gone back into the same thing that you're doing, and again that business has then followed a different model, and unfortunately your role is then transitioned to a low cost area like China or India, or really, it's just being moved into another into another sector of the business. So what I would really tell people is to do something that you're passionate about. Whether it's start your own business, like Solomon says, be an entrepreneur, try and jump in both three on your own. And there are government grants, business grants out there that can help you to start that venture. But again, yes, I also believe it's in the our children, education, really teaching kids, our school education system on really how to, what type of job that that you really enjoy, and with the education system at the moment, it's pure factual base, where some of it doesn't even really align to where the economy is going. So so I watched a video with Jack Ma, right, who's a multi-billionaire in China, right? I've forgotten what's the name of his enterprise. But he was saying,
Alibaba.
that's it, Alibaba.
Alibaba.
Yeah, that's it. And so I watched a video recently on LinkedIn, and he was really presenting to a group of reporters or people in various industry about where do you see the economy going, and how can we help people to move into these roles where, say, for example, artificial intelligence, that our roles don't get replaced by these type of new disruptors, right? And he was saying really is about teaching young children from a young age on really how to deal with important things, how to be an entrepreneur, really teaching the children about what skills that you should really have into becoming someone of, so having your own dream, and it starts in education, but not with this knowledge base where there's facts like yes, of course, mathematics and the sciences and religion, and so, but really, is that really going to help you to further your ambition in your career, or whatever purpose you want in life, in order to be of value to the to the world, and so I agree with Jack Ma in teaching people on how to deal with really their emotions, how to deal with how to be an entrepreneur. Where do you go about becoming an entrepreneur, and how can you help these kids from a young age to believe in themselves, and to have the skill set such as self-esteem, because it's so important to believe in yourself and dealing with your emotions on a deep level. But really, I think when it comes to people, moving and going with the times, with the economy, and where it's going, is to really look at the trends, and really look at where do you think yourself, where do you see yourself that you enjoy the most, whether it is working for yourself or working for another company, but really do a job that you enjoy, because in the long run, you will be so passionate, that the money will come. But really, you first have to have that foundation on having a job that you enjoy. There's people who go into banking and they're earning millions of pounds, but do they truly enjoy what they do? I've spoken to some traders and some people, sales people who earn a considerable amount of money, but they're just never happy. They're never really happy in themselves. They're always looking for the next happiness, and it's a short term. But if you're doing something that you enjoy, then you will have long term enjoyment, and your life will be more fulfilled. But I don't want to go on a tangent with your question, Sol. But really, I do believe people should really look at the what they're passionate about, and where they see themselves in 5-10 years times. We've had self development webinars, and previously in our previous episodes, we have spoken about self development. And going forward, we're going to talk about we're going to try and get some people on our episode on our channel, to really give them their experience on career changes, for example. So we're really building up our base on getting these type of people who are really making an impact within their industry. So I'm looking
Yeah, well, I
forward to
mean,
getting some people on to our channel. and to really.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are working diligently to get industry leaders. Actually, we're working very diligently to bring you the best information on various different subject matters. People that have written articles, are in the music industry, are in the healthcare industry. So yeah, so that's what we are doing presently. But continue to stick with us. And of course, if you like what you hear, then why don't you give us a thumbs up? If you don't like what you hear, give us a thumbs down. If you like what you hear, send a comment. If you don't like what you hear, tell us in the comment section what you don't like. Yeah. So we want to be interactive. We want to communicate with you guys. And yeah, so please subscribe to our channel, and there's more good stuff to come.
Right. Great. Thanks, everyone.
Take care of yourself.
See you later.
And each other.
See ya. Bye.